Captain America, also known as Steve Rogers, is one of my all-time favorite characters. I've been a massive fan of Captain America since I can remember. I've read the comic book since I was little. I remember watching the episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, an episode that Captain America was in. I was always excited to watch, even on repeats. As a kid, I think it was either 3 or 4, I had this Captain America balloon. It was like the first helium balloon I ever had. And I didn't have it for very long. I remember being outside, for some reason or another, the balloon just, got out of my hand. And I remember seeing the balloon just float and float and float. And I was just like, my balloon, my balloon. And I was again, maybe 3 or 4, and I didn't understand the concept of a helium balloon, that it will just keep on going and going and going up if the balloon has nothing to hold on to. I just kept on seeing the balloon going up and up and up until it vanished into the sky, and I believe I was crying. I definitely remember being profoundly sad. I remember going home after that, and that's all I kept thinking about was that balloon. My balloon is gone. My Captain America balloon that I loved so much, that I only had for a few minutes, was forever gone. As the years went on, I collected a whole bunch of Captain America comic books. I saw the 1990 Captain America film from one half of Golan and Globus, the guys behind Canon Films, starring J.D. Salinger's son Matt, and that film. Maybe one day I'll go into detailing on that film, but let's just say I have some opinions on that movie. Let's just say that for now. And so yeah, as the years went on and on and on, eventually there would be a new series of Captain America films, and the MCU version that everyone knows. And the first film to launch this trilogy is Captain America: The First Avenger, starring Chris Evans. I saw Captain America: The First Avenger the first weekend it came out. It was actually that first Friday, and I didn't have the highest of expectations. I certainly didn't have low expectations. At that point, I had seen all the Marvel films, the Phase 1 films at that point in theaters, and Captain America: The First Avenger was one of the last ones to release in that phase. And at that point, my feelings in the Marvel films, with the exception of the first Iron Man, at that point, the MCU films, I really, really liked the first Iron Man film. The rest of the films after that is they were all good, but I wasn't super into them. I just remember that the Hulk was actually part of that batch of films. The one with Edward Norton. A lot of people I think forget about that film being part of Phase 1, and that was actually the second film. And I actually liked that more than I didn't love that film. I actually liked it more than just think it was just good. So when I walked into the theater seeing Captain America: The First Avenger, I was hoping to have just a genuinely solid, good movie and nothing more. And I got a lot more than that once I left the theater. Captain America: The First Avenger, it to me is easily one of the best origin films ever in all of cinematic comicdom films. Yeah, it's up there to me with the first Iron Man, Batman Begins, Superman the movie, the 1978 film, as just one of the best origin films ever, one of the best comic films ever. I really, really, really like it a lot. In fact, I love it. It's not a perfect film, I will say that. I think it's really, really strong for the most part, but I think somewhere in the second half of the film, it kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say diminishing returns, but the first half of the film where Steve, we see him in Brooklyn, we see him with Bucky and their friendship, and later on we see Steve entering the army, and after that he transitions from being a really courageous human being to a super soldier, meeting Peggy, meeting Tom Lee Jones' character, all that, his time where he spends training in the military, his heartfelt interactions with Stanley Tucci, the scene where him and his men rescue the band of soldiers and Bucky, all that stuff is really well done. And then I don't know, it's just at some point, like in the, like I said, the second half of the film, it just isn't as quite as intriguing as the stuff was before. Like, I think maybe it's because they just rush stuff. To me, it feels like a bit rushed when it gets to like the third act of the film. Things get a little bit rushed, like maybe a little bit too montage heavy. I would have liked to have seen another full out like action sequence or battle, like more of like, let's see Captain America be Captain America, you know, just one more lengthy battle, one more lengthy action sequence. And yeah, the film could be just a little bit longer, even though the film runs I think a bit over 2 hours. I think it could have benefited from another like 10-15 minutes at least. But still, the third act of the movie is still really well done stuff. It just isn't as strong as just a bit not as strong as the stuff before. Dude, I just think the pacing is just rushed a bit, not because of any weak writing or, well, I was supposed to say not because of any weak writing. I think everything in the film is strong writing wise. The dialogue, the characterization, particularly like the dynamic duo that is Steve and Peggy, like they are just fantastic. Like the chemistry between Chris Evans and Haley Atwell is just fire. It is one of my favorite on-screen couples. I wish they had gotten more time in general, just throughout the whole entire. I was gonna say whole entire trilogy. I don't think she's at all in Civil War, but just throughout the whole their journey through the MCU. I wish the characters had more time to spend together. But yeah, what we did get, it was really well done and amazing, and yeah, just their all-time couple, Steve and Peggy. And also another dynamic duo in the movie, of course, is Steve and Bucky. We don't get a whole ton of it here in this first film. We get to see more of that in the later stuff, but they're great as well. Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan, they also make a great pair. But going back to what I was saying about weak writing, the one character that suffers with, if I don't know if weak writing's the right word, but not as strong as it could be, not even close, is Red Skull. Red Skull, I think, is this film's like major maybe too strong, but definitely like vulnerable point in this film. He's just pretty much a one-note villain, and it's nothing due to Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving is a fantastic performer, and he does the absolute best for what he has. And I'm not saying that he's forgettable in this movie, but he isn't as indelible, he isn't as impactful as he should be. The Red Skull, he's like Captain America's, he's like his arch nemesis, he is the villain. And to me, he just comes across as someone that's like more, I don't know, diminished in that. Like, he just seems more like a villain of the week, maybe above average villain of the week, but certainly not the arch nemesis, that he should be in the story of Captain America. Like, he should be his Joker, he should be his Kingpin, his Lex Luthor. And Red Skull is quite a complicated character, complex character in the comics. And here, he's just not given much to do, but just be a mustache twirling bad guy. Sorry if that sounds a bit reductive, but yeah, I wish they could have done a lot more. Like, when you think about like the antagonist of the next film, or antagonists in the following Captain America film, or even in Civil War, like, yeah, it's just underwhelming. Outside the characterization of Red Skull, everything about this movie is strong and top notch to me. The direction by Joe Johnston is great. Production design, the look of the movie, everything about this movie is really, really strong. The score is really good. I think one of my all-time favorite composers, Alan Silvestri, did the score. And this film also ends on a strong note, like that climactic scene where Steve has to heroically sink the ship that he's in to save the lives of everyone in New York, and the communication he has with Peggy, like, at least at that moment, their farewell moment together is heartbreaking stuff. the whole movie is like endearingly sincere. Like Captain America is an endearingly sincere character, and that's what I love about him so much. Like, yeah, he's as tough as they come, you know, but he's also not afraid to wear his heart on his sleeve, you know, to put his values, you know, out there for everyone to see. Like, yeah, you know, I believe in what's right and what's good, and so what? You know, everybody should be believing in that. And you know, but that final moment, like, just, I don't know, to him and Peggy, it gets me every time. And then when he goes ahead and he wakes up in what was at that point modern day, and then like just how confused he is, like what happened, why am I still alive, where am I? And when he storms out of where he's at and ends up in Times Square, just even more confused, like what is going on? And then when Nick Fury approaches him and, gives him a clue of like, what has happened to him since, he went inside the water, and that heartbroken look he has on his face when he realizes that he's never going to have that date with Peggy, at least not in the way that he had hoped, that they had hoped. It definitely makes quite an impression, in the most heartfelt of ways. And to me, that's also just one of the best endings ever to a film. The next time Steve Rogers would be seen on screen would be inside the Avengers 2012, a film which I really, really like a lot, and maybe we'll discuss one day in greater detail. Then after that, I believe he had an appearance in no, but it wasn't really him. It was, I think it was Loki pretending to be him in Thor: The Dark World, and yeah, that film. Yeah, that film's something. And then I believe the next time the real Steve Rogers appears in the film is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I first remember hearing about the Winter Soldier, the story of the Winter Soldier, back in the later 2000s. When the comic came out and it was all this hype for it. I remember really wanting to read it, but never getting a chance to do so. At this point in time, I still haven't read the comic version, the original version of the Winter Soldier. I definitely got to make sure that happens one day. And so when I heard an announcement that they would actually be making a cinematic adaptation of the Winter Soldier, I'm like, wow, that sounds awesome. Even though I never read the story, but everyone says it's awesome. So, the making this adaptation has got to be awesome. And my hype for the Captain America films, at least at this point, what would become the Captain America films, has definitely definitely stepped up a notch from just having moderate expectations for Captain America: The First Avenger. Like, I remember seeing the very first trailer, and at the end of the trailer, like, I thought, wow, like, the last shot, it was like, it was like Steve was like chasing the Winter Soldier on the rooftop, and then he throws the shield, and then like he captures the shield. He just catches it in his hand, the shield that's being hurled at him, like it was a frisbee, like it was nothing. And the look on Steve's face, like, who is this guy? So that I thought was really captivating. And so I did see it that first weekend. I believe it was that first Friday. And by the time it ended, it was just fucking wow. Like, it was one of the few times I went to a film in the theater, and it was just all my expectations were blown away. That doesn't happen to me often. Like, I've seen movies, I'm like, oh, that was better than I thought it was. But it is definitely uncommon, when I see a movie, any movie, whether it's in the theater or at home or wherever, where I'm like blown the fuck away. And, like, just from the first frame, it had me completely like hooked. The film, just every moment of Captain America: The Winter Soldier just mesmerized me. I mean, this is just this is cinema. I could go all day talking about Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but I'm just gonna keep it as brief as I can. At this time around, Captain America, he's still adjusting to life in what was then the present day, and just getting used to everything and the people around him and the world around him, and the government that he works for, just everything. He's still just taking it all in. And in this film, he meets up for the first time with Falcon. Sam, played wonderfully by Anthony Mackie. And this film also introduces Robert Redford's character. I suddenly can't remember his name all of a sudden, but Robert Redford is really, really good in this film. Plays a really, intimidating antagonist in this film. This film also has him reuniting with his fellow Avenger, Black Widow, played awesomely by Scarlett Johansson. Like, this may be my favorite version of interpretation of Black Widow. Here and her in Civil War. But this one may be my favorite version, though, along with Civil War. Like, it's just in Civil War, she doesn't have as much screen time, I think, as she does in this film. But this film, like, I really, really fell in love with the character of Natasha. Like, the character Natasha, like, when she first was introduced in Iron Man 2, it's like, they just, like, Scarlett Johansson is such a great actress, but she's, like, criminally underutilized inside Iron Man 2. She's just basically there, so just to simply introduce her, that's it. They don't really care to do anything with her character, anything that's meaningful. And Avengers, like, was the first time I thought, okay, this character can have some potential. And actually, I thought she was realized well in the first Avengers film. Like, I really liked her character there, but this is the film where I really love her character. They did her completely right in this film. Like, she and Steve make such a great, like, pair, like, awesome, like, the chemistry and everything. I also just like the fact how, even though you can say maybe perhaps on her end she's being a little bit flirtatious towards Steve. I mean, I don't really know so much, but it's like playful. It's not anything serious. And on Steve end, he's not being flirtatious at all. Like, it is like the fact, like, you have a couple, a man and a woman, they're both attractive, but they're not trying to, like, sleep with each other. They're not trying to make it a romantic thing, because I'm so sick and tired of film and all types of media that anytime you have an attractive man, an attractive woman, you always have to make them a couple, and that's not reality. That's not to say that when you have two people, regardless of their gender, who are, attractive, and if they're attracted to each other, that they don't try to make something happen. But that's not always the case. That often is not the case. But in films, you would think, like, anytime a man and woman together, like, they're both good looking, so it has to happen. I'm like, no, that doesn't have to be. They could be just friends, okay? They could be just allies, and I love that about them in this film. Another thing I love about this film is the main antagonist, the subtitle character, the Winter Soldier. Like, he is, one of the all-time great, I was gonna say villain, and yeah, he is a villain, but he isn't. It's like, it's Bucky. It's Bucky being mind controlled, the film reveals. And it's just one of the all-time great cinematic characters, the Winter Soldier, and just the way how he looks. He doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of, like, he doesn't really talk much, and, we don't really get to know too much about, like, what's going on in his head and stuff, but he just has such a presence. And the things he does just sticks in your head. The action scenes that he's involved with, like that scene between him and Steve is just, oh my god, that fight scene in the middle of the film, it's just one of the best ones ever committed to celluloid. Like, wow, that like the music, the back and forth between the two, though, when he goes ahead and tries to take a hit and then Steve stops it with that shield, like, that is just an iconic moment. And then, like, that knife that knife fight, the way he's, like, flipping that knife, the Winter Soldier, the way how Steve is just, like, counteracting his moves, like, the music, that scene is perfect. It is a perfect scene, that fight sequence between Steve and the Winter Soldier. Like, the score. I mean, the score throughout the whole movie. And I'm so sorry I forgot the name of the guy who does the score in this film, but he produced some top-notch stuff. Like, the music here is it's fantastic. The direction, just of the the fight scene, and just like the whole movie in general by the Russo brothers. This first time with the Russo brothers were brought to my attention. I had never heard the Russo brothers before this film. The Russo brothers previously had done episodes of Community, which I did watch here and there, but I didn't know that they directed some of those episodes. And I also wasn't aware at the time of this film release, at least like when it was just released, that they had directed You, Me, and Dupree. I remember like after seeing Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and then like, oh, who are these Russo brothers? And I saw, what? They directed You, Me, and Dupree? Like, how the guys who directed that film? And I'm not knocking on the film or anything, but it's like a comedy. Like how, they went from this comedy that really didn't make any impact whatsoever. And they directed this masterpiece. like, I just would have never had thought that would have been possible, but they did. And yeah, just everything about the Winter Soldier is just great. The action scenes, the drama, the characterization, like everything about the Winter Soldier. All the hype about the Winter Soldier is true. You hear people give lists of like the greatest Marvel MCU films, and just comic book films in general. Winter Soldier is almost always at the top of the list, and Winter Soldier is just that good. It is, like I said, it is true cinema, truly great cinema. And also, I want to mention, I cannot forget to mention Sam Jackson. He's in this film as well, and again puts in another great performance. I mean, Sam's the man. I thought he was the man ever since I first saw him all those years ago, in Coming to America, and he makes a great Nick Fury. And of course, Sebastian Stan is once again is fantastic as James Buchanan Barnes. He's absolutely fantastic. Also, one of my favorite character actors, Frank Grillo, also makes a memorable, brief but awesome appearance as Crossbones. The next time we would see Steve Rogers on screen after this is Avengers: Age of Ultron. That film, next, after that, Captain America: Civil War. I remember hearing the announcement of Civil War, and I'm like, that's interesting that they're actually going to go ahead and adapt one of the most famous comic storylines, comic books of the 2000s, Civil War, which was like this major comic book event. I think it was around 2006, something like that. I never actually read Civil War. Like, I remember so much hype about it, really wanting to read it, but just like, Captain America, the Winter Soldier comics, I never got a chance to read Civil War. But I also remember it being very controversial for a number of reasons. But most people liked Civil War, and so, most people said Civil War was good. Then the adaptation, if they did it right, would also be good. And plus, at this point, like, I was super hyped about, the latest Captain America movie. Like, it was the first one in the series, so like, my expectations were through the roof with Captain America Civil War. I was really, really, really loving Captain America. And like, so far, like, the series could do no wrong. His appearances on screen could do no wrong. Even if the movie that he might have been in, I may have not loved that much. Chris Evans was always like dynamic as Captain America. Like, he is the perfect Captain America. Chris Evans' version of Captain America is, he's my favorite MCU character, easily, even though I love many other MCU characters. But, I am Team Captain America all the way, and the whole thing with, like, who are you, with the Civil War movie, you Team Iron Man or Team Captain America? No, I am Team Steve Rogers all the way. I love Tony Stark. I love Iron Man. He's also one of my favorite characters ever. But there's no question who I think is the better of the two for me, and that is Captain America. And spoiler alert, I wholeheartedly enjoy. Like, I love this movie. I remember loving the trailer, like absolutely loving the trailer, like the first one I saw, and I remember kept rewinding it. Particularly like that last part of the trailer where it's like Steve and Bucky versus Iron Man. Oh my god, like, that's just, I don't know, just amazing stuff. What other thing I also loved about the trailer is like when they showed Black Panther, for the first time, like what he would look like on screen. Just really blown away. Like, I thought that was like amazing to we were finally going to get a chance to see Black Panther in the film, because I remember back in the 90s, the later 90s, there was talks about before he had done Blade that it wasn't like a whole lot of talk, but Wesley Snipes was at one point was supposed to play Black Panther in the film, but for one reason or another didn't go forward, and then there was like no talk for a long time about bringing the journey of T'Challa to screen. And then like when he announced Captain America Civil War, they talked about how this will be the MCU introduction of T'Challa. And like, wow, it was awesome. And then what made it even more awesome was hearing the mention of the actor who would be playing him, and Chadwick Boseman. And I thought that was amazing because I happen to be a big fan of Chadwick Boseman's work and of the man himself. I had actually worked with Chadwick Boseman years earlier on a short film called The Appointment, in which I star as a character named Mr. Calloway, a mysterious visitor who isn't all that he seems. And that's all I will say. Just in case anybody wants to see the film, they don't want it spoiled. But yeah, Chadwick was the cinematographer on that film, that short film that was directed by my brother Kevin. And Kevin had went to this digital film school with Chadwick, and they became friends. And they both worked on each other's projects, and The Appointment was Kevin's project that he directed, and Chadwick helped him. And I had worked on the production for 2 days as acting as the character, and I didn't have too much interactions with Chadwick. I did say some stuff, I can't remember what it was. We did talk a little bit, and but what little interaction I did have, I thought he was a cool guy. I thought he was a cool guy. In a way, seeing him work with my brother, seeing him work with everyone else, cool, laid back guy. Really enjoyed working with him. It was really like great production. And just like seeing years later, like going from working with him on The Appointment, and then seeing him break into Hollywood and doing major roles, particularly when he got the role of Jackie Robinson. I think the name of the film was 41. I'm like, wow, like he did it, he made it, and then seeing the other roles he would get, like playing James Brown and Thurgood Marshall. And then seeing him being cast as Black Panther, like, wow, one of us made it. One of us, like, who, worked through getting into the film industry, making our dreams come true, making our film dreams come true, actually truly made it, and made it to the real big time, And I just felt so good seeing one of us, just get to the top, get to the absolute top. And yeah, like like I said, I only interacted for 2 days, but I enjoyed Jake. Love seeing his journey. Seeing him in interviews and films and stuff like that. And yeah, like I miss him. I miss him. Like he should still be here. Producing great work. And just being here. He should still be here. He was a good man, and he will forever be missed. And in addition to returning actors, there's also some new actors to the Captain America saga. You have Robert Downey Jr. for the first time in the Captain America continuity of films. Play Iron Man, and along with a whole bunch of other actors, reprising their roles from other MCU projects. You also have Daniel Bruhl, I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, as Baron Zemo. Also being introduced for the first time is Tom Holland as Peter Parker, also known as Spider-Man. Like I said before, like my hype for this film was through the roof, and I had saw this film actually twice. That first weekend it had came out, I had saw it, at a theater near me, and I also saw it the next day, very, very early in the morning, at an IMAX screening, and at Lincoln Center. And yeah, both experiences, seeing it for the first 2 times, just Yeah, experiences to remember, like cinematic experiences that just yeah, like the hype was definitely like the film definitely I would even say exceeded my expectations. Like, and my expectations were already through the roof. Like, I was thoroughly and completely satisfied. Like I love Civil War. I love it like I love Winter Soldier. In fact, I love Civil War just maybe a little bit more than the Winter Soldier. I know, like with most people, it's the reverse. Like even though most people do really like or love Civil War 2, it's also considered to be one of the best MCU movies. Um, but yeah, like Civil War, like it's just me, just you know, again, true cinema. Like all the things that true cinema does. That's cinema that moves you, that entertains you, that thrills you, that enlightens you, and all that. Like it does all that to me, for me. Captain America's Civil War. I mean, the whole entire trilogy does that for me. Yeah, just seeing for the first time. I remember like seeing it for the first time, you know, on I guess smaller screen in a normal theater. You know, seeing Captain America: Civil War, like the fight that they have at the I think it's the airport hangar. You know, the good guys versus the good guys. You know, and just being just in sheer awe. You know, just seeing this unfold. Like I'm seeing a real, genuine comic book battle on a large scale, you know, something I would see on the pages, being brought, you know, marvelously to life on the big screen, like just blown away. And then seeing that the very next day on the IMAX screen, it was like almost an otherworldly experience. Like, I may be saying, I may be sounding hyperbolic here, but no, it was, yeah, it was an astonishing experience. Like seeing Civil War, you know, every time I saw it, like I remember seeing it again for the third time. Like I think it was the following weekend. I'm not too sure. Like, because the first time I saw Civil War, I saw it with my brother Kevin, and then when I saw it the next day, I saw it with my best friend Andre. And then the next weekend, or whenever it was, the third time I saw it with the, you know, other members of my family. I believe it was both my parents and my younger brother Christopher, and it was amazing every single time. Like I think I might have seen Civil War by the time its theatrical run was done. I think I might have seen it at least 4 times. Like that was how, you know, amazing the film was to me, and still is. Like, yeah, again, just like the Winter Soldier, like, you know, I love the dramatic stuff in it, the characterizations. Again, like the marvelous direction by the Russo brothers, the production design, the costumes. I mean, everything. Like the heightened tensions in this film, you know, particularly like the tensions between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers in this film is some really riveting material, particularly when it all culminates into that compelling and chaotic climax of the film. It is just really like on the edge of your seat, like, you know, white knuckle dynamics in the end, like just the altercation between, you know, Bucky, Steve, and Tony, and you know Zemo's also involved as well, but it's mainly between those three, and it's just yeah, like it's earth-shattering stuff, like at least on an emotional level, like in regards to their relationships, and like because from that point forward, like the Avengers are never the same once that confrontation ceases between the three of them, like. And the Marvel universe is never the same because the Avengers disband from that point after the fallout of Civil War. Like Thanos is able to do what he does, you know, and if the Avengers were together, you know, as one in Infinity War, maybe things would have turned out differently. Maybe things would have turned out differently. And that's one of the things I love about Civil War. Like, that's one of the things I love about, amongst many things, with the Captain America trilogy. Like, the stakes are high. The stakes are really high, and things have impact. You know, when events happen, like there's definitely a ripple effect. You know, and a thing I do not like about a lot of stories that I see, particularly lately with Hollywood's obsession with retcons and rebooting stuff. It's like taking events that were like impactful events and just basically erasing them. Like, I hate that shit with a passion. It's like, for example, like the Star Wars trilogy. Like, you have the original trilogy and the way how that ends, and then the way how that sequel trilogy just upends, you know, erases, invalidates, ignore the stuff that happened in those films, particularly with Return of the Jedi. You know, for example, like Palpatine was supposed to be dead, and then like somehow Palpatine is back. I forgot what the. Well, no, it's somehow Palpatine has returned. What the fuck? And this is no hate toward Oscar Isaac. He's a great actor. That wasn't his fault. It's just like it was other people's fault. And just like, why are you undoing events? Why are you undoing history? And that's what I keep seeing over and over again. Like, I just can't stand watching stories, like long-running stories, where stuff happens, but then all of a sudden it no longer has any impact or meaning because they just want to make all these contrived stories and like, well, this event happened. So, you know, any good storytelling know that once a certain events happen that has a lot of impact, that's indelible, that's irrevocable. You know, you can't do certain things. But no, you have these writers like, I don't care if this particular happened, if this event happened. I don't care if someone died. If they die, you could just bring them back. I don't care if this irreversible thing happened. We could go ahead and just reboot it, retcon it. And I can't stand that shit. No respect for legacy. No respect for history. You know, meaningful stuff needs to happen. When meaningful stuff happens, stories. Not every story needs to be serious, okay? But when serious stuff does happen, you need to let it play out. You need people to feel the after effects, the characters, the audiences, and stuff like that. And Captain America is filled with stuff that, like, you know, has impact, that causes change, that causes a ripple effect. This series does that better than most series. And that's why I love it so much. And also growth, seeing like true growth in characters, particularly in Steve Rogers, how we see him start out as this skinny kid who just wants to do right but isn't given a chance in the first Captain America film, and then by the time his journey ends, you know, in at least for this point of time in Avengers Endgame, like, you see somebody who's been through a lot, who in one way is fundamentally the same in terms of being a good guy, but in many ways is very different and has grown and has improved and helps others improve. And you know, he's just all the better for it, you know, going through this journey. We're all better for it as an audience seeing him, you know, on this journey. And, you know, and most of his journey, the bulk of it takes place in these 3 films, and which is why, to me, like, it is the greatest comic book film trilogy of all time. Like, that honor could have gone to, you know, Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, but I love Batman Begins. It is a classic, one of the best ever made. I adore The Dark Knight. Full-blown masterpiece, easily one of the best films ever made. But The Dark Knight Rises, that movie. I will one day talk about that movie. Not sure when. It could be a long time from now. It could be, you know, shorter than that. But yes, I have issues with that movie. That's all I'm going to say for now. And because of those issues, it can't be the greatest comic book film trilogy of all time. I know that to some people that may seem like, you know, blasphemous. I remember once I told somebody I did not like Dark Knight Rises, and they said, fuck you. And they meant it like, you know, they didn't be like serious, like, you know, they were joking, but then like they were kind of not. Like, I'm like thinking, fuck you too. I didn't say that to them, of course, and I didn't even think that at that moment, even though maybe I wish I had. Anyway, but yeah, like, yeah, I know in certain circles, a lot of circles, like, you're mine, like, Captain America trilogy is good, great even, but it doesn't nowhere near rival the sheer magnitude of magnificentness of the Nolan trilogy. But sorry, I feel otherwise, and anybody who wants to go ahead and debate me, go right ahead. I am ready for you. But in all seriousness, though, yeah, I really do love this trilogy. It's consistent. It's a trilogy that continues to grow and grow and grow as it goes on. It just gets better. I can only think on one hand of a trilogy of films or a series of films where each one is better than last. Like on literally one hand, I could like count that. And Captain America, the Steve Rogers trilogy, is unquestionably one of them. There's so much more I could say about this trilogy, but I'd be talking all day and I have to wrap this up. There's probably a bunch of people who I'm forgetting to acknowledge in terms of like, you know, the awesome parts they played in bringing this trilogy to life. But you know, I just want to say thank you to everyone who, you know, who in whatever way they helped, you know, bring this trilogy to life. This trilogy of amazing films to the big screen, you know, to the public, for the world to see. Like, thank you all so very, very, very much. You all definitely rock. In a world where, like, I don't know, like, I guess I'll close out with this. Like, good guys, like real good guys. Like, Superman is my favorite character of all time, Superman. And one day I will talk at length about Superman. You know, I just love Superman for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons I really love Superman is that he's just a truly good guy who's trying to do right. You know, not perfect. Like, people think that Superman's perfect. He's not. He has his flaws, you know, in one way or another, or at least something that can be perceived as a flaw. But, you know, he's just a guy who just tries to do right. You know, even when people tell him, like, you know, what's the point? You know, you're a goody good, or I don't know, like, you can't do everything. Like, you know, just like, I do what I can because, you know, I want to, you know, not for a reward, not for this or that, but because I want to. And Steve Rogers is cut from that same mold. You know, he does good because he wants to, because he is good. There's no other reason to do good but other than that. And Steve Rogers is also, you know, one of my favorite characters of all time. But I think I said that at the beginning of this. I love Steve Rogers so much. And I remember when the first Captain America came out, and it didn't get that much play. It was the least grossing of, I believe, of all the MCU films in Phase 1. I think it even grossed less than the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. And I remember when it came out, like, people liked it, but they didn't, like, love it. Like, they loved Chris Evans in it. Like, everyone loved him in it. But the film was good, you know, but I sort of wasn't getting the same type of, like, praise or adulation that the other MCU films got at the time. And, but then, like, and part of the reason was, like, you know, Captain America is, like, he's goody. Like, you know, I love Chris Evans in roles, stuff like that. But, like, can anybody relate to a character like that in these days? Like, you know, so who's just, you know, thoroughly good, you know, may be seen as corny or too safe or whatever, you know, not relatable, which is bullshit, but whatever. But then, of course, when Captain America the Winter Soldier came out, yeah, all of a sudden, like, boom, people were Team Captain America. Captain America rocks. Like, Captain America's the man and this and that. And rightfully so, of course. But they should have been thinking that with the first Captain America film, you know. But I'm just glad when Captain America the Winter Soldier came out. And then, like, you know, well, actually, no. Actually, I'm jumping ahead here. I actually did that with the Avengers. That was the film that people really realized at large, like the full greatness of Captain America was that movie. And then, like, 2 years later, the Winter Soldier cemented, you know, the greatness, the goodness of Steve Rogers, and why that type of good is valuable, that type of good is needed, and it should be cherished, you know. And I just love seeing that. Like, yes, like, the masses at large, like are finally like seeing like why the world needs, Steve Rogers, that type of good is not corny. That type of good is relatable. That type of good is, achievable. And yeah, like Marvel, whatever you can say about Marvel, then and now, the MCU in particular, what I mean, it's like, they did something that the DC, DCEU, DCU, has had issue with over the years, like with Superman, like trying to make him like to have him fully embraced his goodness. Because to this day, I still hear back and forth like, nobody can relate to Superman, and his type of goodness is out of style, and even though like that's definitely come down over the years, like I'm not seeing as much, particularly like recently with the release of Superman, James Gunn's Superman. I'm glad how, even though the film, box office wise, you could definitely argue could have done better, but in terms of like public opinion of the film, for those who saw it, like I'm glad like they gravitated to just a purely good version of Superman, like the way how Superman's supposed to be, and particularly in these times right now where things are, seemingly so oppressively dark in so many ways. What's going on in the real world, and we need more characters like that. We need more Kal-Els, Clark Kents, and Steve Rogers, and I'm just glad just seeing like the mass appreciation for those characters, and seeing the mass appreciation for the MCU version of Captain America, and just the character Captain America in general. Just seeing like people being more, just appreciative of, the comics, and reading more of the best of Captain America comics, and, just seeing him more popular amongst everyone. Steve Rogers, Captain America, is a good guy, and you can never, ever have enough good guys, good people in this world.